Folks, we're back. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas, another episode of Veterans in Politics. Today we're going to have a live stream video interview with Ozzie Fumo, Nevada State Assemblyman and candidate for Nevada Supreme Court seat, letter D. Jim, do you have anything?
Just a couple things I wanted to get out of the way real quick. Number one, want to say happy birthday to Patrick Llewellyn. A friend of ours at Veterans in Politics, and I consider a personal friend. And so it's Patrick's birthday today. And
what is he, like 90 or something?
I don't know. But Steve and I can both attest to the fact that all the cool, best people were born under the sign of Virgo.
That's right.
So Patrick is a fellow, I don't know how you'd say that, Virgonian?
Virgonian. Remember, Virgos are pure and untouched.
Yep.
Remember that? He said that kicks you out.
You said it, not much. And then another thing, we won't, maybe not, won't be taping another episode before September 12th. September 12th will be the 1-year anniversary of a very close family friend of my family, Bert Bogner. He passed away. This will be his 1-year anniversary of passing away. Just condolences to the entire Bogner family. Growing up, Bert Bogner was a mentor to me and a great inspiration to me in my life. And he kind of took my dad under his wing. Between him and Mike Harris, helped my dad. His father was not as involved in my dad's life as he should have been, and those two gentlemen stood up big. I also, being that it's Veterans of Politics, want to let everybody know that Bert Bogner's oldest granddaughter, Josie Bogner, recently graduated Navy boot camp, so she's in the Navy now. So we want to thank her for her service, and also Bert's twin sons both also served in the Navy. So I just wanted to, say thoughts and prayers will be with them. I know that 1-year anniversary can be kind of tough, and just want to overall thank the Bogner family for everything they've done for me and my family throughout our lives.
It's really nice that you do that. Happy birthday and remembrance of someone who's gone for a year. It's tough. It is. I lost my mom in February of 2019 during the legislative session. And I never dealt with it while I was there because I was so focused on the session. And it wasn't until a year later my wife and I went out of town. Yeah, and she took me to a place where we'd go every summer with my parents. It was Laguna Beach, and when I got there and I saw the ocean for the first time, it hit me and I just broke down because you don't process it. You need that time to grieve, and it is always good to remember. So I applaud you for remembering that, especially close family friends like that. They're not gone if you remember them like that. They're always in your heart.
Well, thank you.
It was nice.
Assemblyman Fumo. That is a nice suit jacket you got. Tell us a little bit about you.
Tell me about me. Okay, I grew up here in Las Vegas. So I lived in Nevada since 1975. My dad was transferred from, he worked for Hilton Hotels and transferred from Houston to Los Angeles. Los Angeles, we were there for about 5 years, then we moved to Las Vegas in 75. And so I grew up here, my formative years here in Vegas. Love Las Vegas, wanted to make it my home forever. I went to high school here, graduated, and when I graduated high school, like every high school kid, I think you want to get out of town.
Right.
And I went to University of San Diego because I wanted to be close to the beach, so respect for the Padres out there.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time at the games.
What high school?
Gorman, at the Bishop Gorman High School.
Okay.
I think now in Vegas we have 40 high schools. At the time when we grew up, it was 9.
Yeah, I think when I graduated, there were 12.
Yeah?
Yeah, so it's just amazing. Like, I can't keep up with them all now.
So small here. So yeah, I went to University of San Diego, came back, started working, but then realized I wanted to go to law school. and decided to go back. But back then, there was no law school in Vegas.
So
So
what made you want to go to law school?
I think I always wanted to go to law school, always did. And when I grew up, here in Las Vegas, I think I wanted to get into corporate law, work for a casino, work for a management of a casino.
Right.
And then had an incident happen to me after college that made me redirect and refocus what I wanted to do as far as getting into helping people.
And what
doing
incident
that was criminal defense work. So I was in college,
Okay.
got a ticket for.
Were you in a fraternity?
I was not in a social fraternity.
Alpha, Mega.
No, I was in actually a business fraternity. I was a business major, and it was Alpha Kappa Psi. It was,
Alpha Kappa Psi.
yeah, I was a member of that fraternity in University of San Diego and in UNLV. Came back here for one semester. I had a friend pass away, took a semester off from school,
Right.
came here to UNLV, and I think it was during that time I got a traffic ticket.
Okay.
And
Did you do it?
it was speeding, I think. It was either that or stops. Heck yeah. I was guilty as charged, no doubt about that. But I was either supposed to do a fine and traffic school or one or the other, and I didn't do one or the other. One of the
Right.
things fell through the crack. And about a year and a half later, I'm driving, going to work, and I got pulled over again, and the officer says, you got a license plate was hanging by just one screw.
Yeah.
Nice guy pulls me, and says, I'll help you fix it, screw it, pulled it back on for me. And he said, I got to run you. I said, sure, no problem. I did nothing wrong. He run me, go ahead.
Right.
Comes back and he says, you got a warrant for your arrest.
Ooh.
And so I'm like, you got to be kidding me. There's no way. Get out of here. He said, no, I got to take you in.
You don't have to take me in.
Yeah,
What do you have to do is die and pay taxes.
Exactly. He takes me in, and he couldn't have been nicer. But while I was in there, I saw things. There's no clocks, there's no windows. You are isolated from the rest of the world.
Twilight Zone.
Time stops, right? I was in there. I know I was in there for about 13 hours, calculated. It felt like 2 weeks, because you just have no concept of what's going on.
Yeah.
And while I was in there, I saw things that were horrific. People getting abused, whether it was verbal or physical.
By who?
By the police and by each other. There was stuff going on, fights inside.
So by the COs and by
Oh,
inmates.
man. I remember one time sitting around the room and everybody's talking about what they did to get arrested. There's one guy coming out of Nevada State Prison, was being released, was going there. Another guy was the battery domestic.
What year was this?
It was in the late 80s or early 90s, so it had to be after I graduated, so 88 to 92, somewhere in that time frame.
Yeah.
So, people were just going around talking about what they did to get arrested, and I'm thinking, holy shit, I can't tell these guys I had a traffic ticket that I forgot to pay. I got to say something more serious than that. And they got to me, and I said, you know what? Those tags on your mattress that say do not remove under penalty of life? I said, I removed one, and they fucking arrested me. I couldn't believe it. So anyway, that was a joke. So I was in there, but when I was coming out, they count your money, they do the processing stuff, and I got probably $12, $15. I made nothing major. But being a business major, and I said, you get $12. I went to grab it to count. The guy pulls out a club, bam, smacks it across my hand. That didn't break any bones or really, he knew where to hit, say here, but enough to scare the crap out of me. And based on that one incident and the things I saw when I was in there, I said, I am going to go to law school, but I'm going to change what I want to do and help people that are in there like me, because not everybody in there is committed to the worst of the worst crime kind of thing. And I always tell judges, when you're sentencing people, thank God we are not defined by the worst thing we ever did. And sometimes it's not something that bad that can change your whole life, even like a traffic ticket. So when I did get out, I started to go into classes, and you take the criminal procedure, criminal law. I did real well in those classes. Came back here, worked for another attorney as a clerk. Really enjoyed what I did, and that incident and the fact that I did well in school and those things really made me focus and want to do criminal defense work. So I got out of law school, came to work for an attorney. We did personal injury and a little bit of criminal defense. That was Craig Perry was the first guy I worked for, and really enjoyed working for him. And he's the one who said, if you enjoy that, develop it, bring in those cases. So, I talk to people and pass out my cards in the courtroom and stuff, and built my own practice. Now, my office is on the corner of Las Vegas Boulevard and Bonneville. Right. Craig Perry's office was on 8th Street, and I used to walk past that every day when I was going to court. I like walking. And I see this building for sale, and it had Las Vegas Cash Register in it, which doesn't exist anymore, a bail bonds company, which was Bail Bonds Incorporated, and it had a sandwich shop, which was Maxie's Deli. You remember Maxie? So Maxie was an old-time thing. Yeah, so I would go by there and talk to those guys every once in a while. I was on the corner and stuff. And
You were at the courthouse grill all the time.
oh yeah, hanging out there. And those were great times too. You know, with Tom Pitaro, George Foley, Charlie Waterman, those guys sitting out there.
You remember when I met you?
I met you through Judge Joe Sacento.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had an office with Joe Sacento, who's now judge, and Diana Hampton.
Was that? I thought I met you before that.
Diana Hampton was there. I remember her being there before she became judge.
Yeah.
And Mike Yepko. Remember Mike with he was a process server, former FBI, former cop. He was up in there too.
He married Angela Holland at one point, right?
That's right. Was Tony Abatangelo's JEA.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
How's Mike doing? You still keep in touch?
Oh yeah. In fact, we were talking about him earlier.
We were just talking about it before we got here, actually.
Yeah. I'd like to see him. Tell him I said hello. I haven't thought of him in a long time because I don't think he does that anymore, does he?
No.
No, probably not.
No.
So anyway, back there, so I'd walking back there, I'd see these guys there and talk to them every once in a while. And the Las Vegas cash register went out of business and they had a spot open. So I went in there, looked at it, checked it out, talked to the owner of it, and talked to Craig, and he was very supportive of me and opened my shop right there. And so I rented it for 2 or 3 years, and the landlord would come to me every once in a while and say, hey, if you can pay your rent a little early, I'll knock off $100, we'll do this. And I said, sure. And I found out later he was behind on his mortgage payments. And one day I'm in there, and the owner of the building comes into me and he says, my name's Harry Soldinger. I own this building, and I'm going to give you 30 days notice to get out because I'm selling it. And so I was like, oh, no. So I just started practicing. And he came up to me and said, I'm selling it for, I can't remember what the price was, $320,000 or $380,000. And he says to me, I'll tell you what, kid. And I was like in my early 30s. He's in his 70s at this point. He says, I'll tell you what, if you can come up with $10,000 down, I'll carry the note for you, because he couldn't sell it. It wasn't selling fast enough. And I said, oh my God, saved up all my money and working for like 6 months. And I called him up. I said, Harry, I got $7,500, but I can give you that. And so we worked out this great deal. And I bought the building from him, and it was a 10-year note, paid it off in about 8.5 years. And Harry was a great man. He passed away several years ago, but I've been in the same building, was the point of my story, since 1996. I've been in that corner. I'm still there today. In 2010, there was a fire at the sandwich shop.
Yeah.
The whole thing burned down.
I thought you were on Las Vegas Boulevard, no?
That's it. Las Vegas
Boulevard. That's the same one.
Yeah, that's the same one.
Okay, with Tom Pitaro?
Tom Pitaro, yes, sir.
Yeah.
So we've been there the whole time. In 2010, though, it burned down. It was a fire. So we had another building that we bought on Casino Center. Was there when we rebuilt it. We put a second story on it, and Tom and I moved back. Yeah. But like I said, I've been a street lawyer, right there, and I've done everything out of that building. We've done family law, we've done civil litigation, we've done business litigation.
What do you think about family law?
It is really tough. That's probably the most heartbreaking. You get criminal defense law and people coming in. There's orders and stuff. Very, very serious crimes. But family law is the most heart-wrenching, because no matter what it is, a union is breaking up, a family is breaking up, and it's
a civil death.
It really is. That's a great way to put it, a civil death. And when I was at the legislature, Judge Bell came last session, and I was on the Judiciary Committee, and they were trying to get more judges and better pay for the judges. And because we were having the economic crisis with teachers, we really couldn't spread everything around. And I remember asking her, if we can only give you enough judges for one area, what would it be? And so there's family law, there's civil business litigation, and there's criminal. Mm-hmm. And she said, it's family. We are really just drowning with, you have, because in family law, you can pro per file, don't necessarily have to have the attorney in that. And she said, we just need it there more than anything. It's so much. And so that's one of the things I'm proud of, running for the Supreme Court, is having done that, whether it's juvenile law or divorce law, things like that. You need a justice who's been there and done that kind of thing. And that is, I think, not just the busiest court, but probably the busiest appeals. Because if they're going through all those cases, they got to be up there for appeals. And you want a justice who's up there who actually has read that law, knows that law. And I said, I'll be the only one who's stood next to a client, represented a Nevadan. Right? The rest of the judges, including my opponent, he's worked for the government his entire career. He was a prosecutor. And
so you know what it's like to sign the front of a check.
I do. I sign the front and the back, right? I've been the managing partner of my own firm since '96. And when I merged with Tom, that's one of the things he said. I don't want to do the day-to-day. I don't want to have to pay the taxes and the insurance. I want to have that, but I need someone to do that. And we work that out. So I'm the managing partner of that firm. And we've gone through some tough times. In 2008, the economy crashed. In 2020, nobody saw this coming. In 2008, you could almost prepare and save. one of the things I learned from what happened in 08 was to save some money, put some money in trust, put some money in a different account, hold it for those rainy days, because and I always say it's like a wave, you know, it crests, it comes down, it crashes, and you just got to ride the wave while you can, but when it crashes, you got to be prepared. In our firm, we have 6 attorneys and we have 6 support staff. And everybody in our firm has a good salary, and we pay for their insurance and the insurance of their kids. So if you work for me, I don't say, Steve, you know, your insurance is covered, but if you want to cover your family, you're going to have to pay X amount a month. Or if you want insurance, you're going to have to pay for it out of your own pocket. We pay for it, and if you got kids, we pay for the kids too. And it has worked out so well because in all my years, I rarely have turnover. I've had the same secretary for the last 15 years.
People like to hang out with you?
They do. They come over. You know, I like to smoke the cigars after work, and you see me on the corner, and people will come and stop by. But the staff stays, right? And when the economy crashed, and I told my staff, I said, if you feel more comfortable working from home, we can set that up. We can let you work remotely. You can do whatever. And everybody said they wanted to come in. Everybody wanted to be a part of the team and not. And I do a lot of that over and above board stuff at our firm too. So we immediately said, you know, you have to wear a mask to come in. We thought that was a safety measure. But I have a guy come in every week and he cleans the handrails, the door jambs with bleach, you know, and just we clean it obsessively to make sure it's clean. The clients come in and they're like, you know, I can smell the bleach, you know, it's clean. And, you know, every picture frame is redone every week. We just make sure it's like that. And so our staff,
We're getting that done right now.
Yeah, good. They wanted to stay. And then when school started this last semester, I have a couple people that work for me that have kids. And so I told them the same thing. Listen, if you need to stay home, because I know everybody's working remotely, we will make every effort. And so my secretary has been with me for 15 years. Christine, you know, her son is in kindergarten. And so she stays with him in the morning. He does his classes, and she comes in from 1 to 5 is when the office is open. And she's like, she stays until 8, 9, whenever she's done. You know, she doesn't care. I just want to get the work done for you. So it's that loyalty you can't train, you know. And then, you know, I remember talking to stories about people coming to the legislature with me, telling me, you know, the Fight for 15, they wanted to raise the pay and everything, and people were saying, oh, it was tough on the small businesses. And I told them, I said, I have a small business, and nobody in my firm, you know, makes as little as 15. Everybody gets paid more than that, but I have loyalty. I don't have turnover every 6 months or every year. I don't have to train somebody, and I don't have to worry about my receptionist or secretary stealing money. I've never had an incident where I've gone through the books and, hey, where's that? You know, the money is always there because they're loyal. You know, they want to keep that job, and it's been a great experience doing that. But it's been tough during these economic times. You know, business dropped immediately, and you know, who knows when it's going to pick up. If we get a vaccine and the rate drops, people start coming to Vegas more, and maybe it picks up again. And I always say we're the first one in the recession and the last one out.
Yeah.
Pretty much. You have to watch for that.
Yeah, Senator Fumo, you're running for Nevada Supreme Court, which is the highest court in the land. Tell us exactly what a Supreme Court justice does.
That's a great question. A lot of people don't know that. So, you know, the one person that's going to touch your life more than anything is a judge, right? Whether in the 3 branches of government, you're probably not going to meet the governor, not going to know too many of your legislators, but every once in a while you're going to get a ticket or have a business thing or a family dispute. A judge is going to see what happens there. And so if you get, say, arrested, you're going to go into justice court first if it's a felony. And if that gets bound up to district court, you're going to see it from a justice of the peace to a district court judge.
Your lawyer fees just went up.
Right. Right. So it's like a parking meter. You want the time, you got to pay the time. Right. So yeah, you go to district court and you take your case to trial. Now, if it's a civil trial, no matter who wins or loses, the other party can appeal.
Right.
If it's a criminal case, you know, if the defense loses, they can appeal. The state doesn't like them, they can appeal. So, you know, everybody has this appellate process. And so if it's appealed from district court, it goes to our Nevada State Supreme Court. Now, we have a different model than a lot of other states. In Nevada, we have what's called a kick-down system. So if you appeal your case from the district court level, it goes to the Supreme Court. And if the Supreme Court, for whatever reason, they can grant a petition, deny a petition, or have a hearing. So I've done several cases where I've written briefs to the Supreme Court, and they've either granted or denied. I've never had that oral argument. But it can be kicked down to the appellate court. And the appellate court can do the same thing, grant it, deny it, or have a hearing on it. So in Nevada, we have the Justice, District, Supreme, and then the appellate. And I think the reason that they did this kick-down system, rather than going up through the appellate court to the Supreme Court, is you have 7 Supreme Court justices and only 3 on the appellate court. And so if we put everything from district court to the appellate court, it would bottleneck there, and they wouldn't have the time. So it gets through that. So the Supreme Court justice applies the case law. What is the rule of law? What is the rule to the facts of a particular case when they're given, and then they make a decision. Now they can either grant it, deny it, or turn it down, overrule a case, or tell a judge you made a mistake, we're going to send it back for a rehearing on a particular matter. And so they're kind of the supreme law of the land we have. Now if you exhaust the appeals there, you can go to federal court. And I do a lot of federal work as well. So I've been practicing, like I said, 24 years. And so my practice, we do federal.
So how long you been practicing law?
24 years.
I thought it was longer than that.
Yeah, I look old. Where is I? Yeah.
How old are you?
55.
Oh, okay. So 24 years, not bad.
So yeah, I've been in federal court a lot. And so federal court, if you exhaust your appeals in the state court, you can go to the federal district court,
right,
and the judge there can make a decision and send it back. And if you don't like that, you can go to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Right. And I've had several cases where I've argued before the Ninth Circuit where, again, that court can grant a petition, deny a petition, or have an oral argument. And I've gone up, and we don't have the Ninth Circuit in Nevada. It goes to the Ninth Circuit is a circuit of different states, and so it's in San Francisco, California.
Right.
Is where we'll go. And have you ever been there? Not San Francisco, but to the appellate court.
I've been to the appellate court.
It's amazing. No. I'm talking about the San Francisco, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
No.
Absolutely beautiful. It's an old. The building was probably built.
I'm sure I'll probably get there.
Yeah, eventually, right? It's an older building. It's 4 or 5 stories tall. It's an old post office built in like the 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
And I think it looks like a church. I mean, it's got stained glass windows. It's absolutely beautiful. Marble inside there. It's fantastic. And so walking in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, you're in awe. You know, when you've been to the court down here, the Supreme Court, where they have it on 4th Street, you know, it's like that times 100 in that court. It's just amazing.
So one question I have for you, when you were talking about case law, because one of the things that one of the reasons why, and I'm glad they did finally get an appellate court here in the state of Nevada, because I think kicking everything up to the Supreme Court was too much. So when you talk about applying state law or case law, one of the things that has been brought up to me on several occasions, and this was years ago actually, so I could be outdating myself, but what case law, I mean, from what I was told, there's not a whole lot of case law to go off of in the state of Nevada. It's basically based off California, and they pretty much follow the same thing as California. Is that true? Or?
We were telling the story, you know, we've been a state since 1864, 1863, right?
Right.
President Lincoln was in and back then there was just the 3, Supreme Court justices. And so there is case law for over 150 years now. We've had case law in Nevada. And what we do is take our law is, the Ninth Circuit does control,
Right.
State law here. And so a Supreme Court justice who's, will apply the Constitution, Nevada Constitution, and through it, the United States Constitution, and to the case law here. So you have about 150, 180 years of precedent here.
Right.
It's rare to find, something new, but there is always. That's one of the things I love about the law. And like I said, I've done family, civil, business, criminal. And when I do a criminal case or a family, there's something new you learn every single time. You've been in the military. I've never had that experience, but whether it's a gunshot, when you learn about striations of the bullets, or how the bullet decompresses, or the body parts. When a gun strikes somebody, how it's just amazing. The things you learn.
If you have a hollow point, or if you have a range round, or if you have a 9mm or a 45, it depends on the caliber.
Different caliber gun, yeah,
and how close you are to your target.
Great point, right?
Well,
so, and so you learn all. I should hire you as an expert on some of my cases.
No, I'm for it. I'm not an expert on that. I know experts, though.
Yeah, but it's amazing that you learn something new every day in the law. And so to answer your question, do we take stuff from California? Occasionally,
Yeah.
And if I'm writing a brief and it's a novel issue, I will apply Nevada law first.
Right.
But then if there's something that I think we should change, I might look to other states and say, when I'm writing a brief to the Nevada Supreme Court, look, justices, in California they do it this way, in Arizona they do it this way, in Utah they do it this way. We're the only state that does it a different way. And sometimes, we have to fall in line. So you look at other law or other states for guidance a lot of times, and a lot of people look to California, probably because it's the biggest state and has the more case law, that they will look to that first. But it was amazing when you talking about that. I was thinking of another story while I was at the legislature. If I can digress a little bit. Sure. When I was at the legislature, first time I was running.
How long have you been in the assembly?
Two terms, 4 years.
Okay.
And I got into it because I wanted to help change the law on certain things. But when I was knocking on doors, the first session, 2016, I'm going around in weird state of 3 million people.
Right.
And so each assembly person has a Senate assembly district of 65,000 people. And you knock on all these doors, people that you're voters, and you want to talk to them and get ideas.
And what's your assembly district?
I'm 21.
21.
With Blackjack.
So what does that come?
We are, so I am in Silverado Ranch area.
Mhm.
So the Silverado Ranch is the main street. There's one street over Piles where the district actually
Right.
starts, and it goes all the way to Warm Springs.
Right.
Bermuda, by Maryland Parkway, a little above it, down to Eastern. And I have a little, what I call a panhandle that goes into Henderson. So I've got a little bit of Robindale and Pecos in that area. So it's a varied and
I
vast
work in
district.
that area.
It's amazing. Yeah, they're great people. And I've lived there for 20 years. I bought my house there in 1999. So I've lived 25 years now. But at the time, 20 years I've been there. I know my neighbors. I know the people. And I was talking to everybody and everybody I could. And I met this family called the Chernikovs. And they told me about their son who had passed away. He's 51 years old and he died on a paratransit bus. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, he was special needs. And he was eating a peanut butter sandwich. And he choked, and the bus driver didn't know how to help. He didn't know CPR. And I saw the video. I felt bad. My heart bled for the
Did you
driver.
know the Hamlet maneuver?
Panicked, absolutely panicked, and didn't know, never been trained. And so when I did a little research, I found out that Nevada was the only state in the union that we didn't teach our paratransit drivers CPR. When you think about that, the only state in the union that never taught CPR to their drivers. And so when I was talking about the cases and we looked at other states, when I looked to the other states for guidance, every other state does. And so it was really a feel-good bill, to get something like that through. And so now we teach paratransit drivers in Nevada CPR, and hopefully we save more lives. And I remember the mother talking to me about that. She goes, it's not in this for the money. I'm not trying to get any recognition. I'm not asking for it. But I did call it Harvey's Law. It was after her son. But she said, I just don't want any other parent to have to go through what I went through. My son was special needs. I loved him very much. I worried about him every day. And I never thought that he would choke on a sandwich and this would happen. So
On a bus.
on a bus, yeah. And so now we changed the law in Nevada. So I looked to every other state to do that. And when I found out we were the only ones that didn't do it, and there was no valid reason why. You know how much it costs to learn CPR?
Pennies.
$15. And it qualifies you for 3 years.
I was going to say, I get it free through work.
I mean, everybody should learn CPR.
Right? Yeah. So, it was interesting.
So you got that law passed.
Yeah, that was one of
So
the
how many
first
lives do you think you saved?
I have no idea, and I would love to know one day when I meet my maker to find out that this happened because you passed this bill and all these people were saved, or
You've been a criminal defense attorney for how long?
24 years easily. I dabbled in everything when I first started, and we have a firm now with 6 attorneys, so we do everything.
If you had a problem, okay, and you got caught up in some mess and you had to hire a criminal defense attorney, who would you hire?
Hire me.
You're the one with the problem.
They say.
So
Attorney hires himself.
what attorney would you hire?
Yeah, they're
Or
Tom.
would it be a slew of attorneys?
Yeah, you try to get a team, right? I would hire my partner Tom Pitaro or Bill Terry. They're the two best.
Bill Terry.
Yeah, Bill Terry is a fascinating man. It goes back to when we first met in the.
Yeah, I know Bill Terry well.
Yeah, see, we've all had.
Yeah, I've pretty much paid his rent. Hey, Bill.
And Bill, I hired Bill Terry too at one point.
He's an amazing attorney. Bill Terry gets along with everybody. Loves everybody. He's a fighter.
And he's the one that's defending the judges.
Yeah, he does a lot of that work. It's a specialized area.
You're welcome, Bill Terry.
He does. That's a specialized area too. We do a little bit of that in our office as well. Because there's not a lot, there's only 32.
I didn't even know that was a specialized trade
Sure.
until all this went down.
Yeah. So yeah, he does a lot of that. And I first met him at that gourmet cafe. We're talking, when I was a young attorney, hanging around with Joe Cicento and my buddy John Duffy, we'd go to court every morning, and the courthouse was in a different place than the RJC, where it was. And so we'd walk from court back, and sometimes you had to wait for a prelim to start or a trial to start in the afternoon, and you go grab a cup of coffee or get breakfast real quick if you could. And Joe, his office was in that building, 3rd Street Tower, the Phoenix building, they call it, right? And so I'd hang out there, and there was this table of 4 attorneys, these guys that would sit there, and it was Tom Pitaro, Bill Terry, Charlie Waterman, George Foley. And we called it the table of 4.
Amy Chling.
Amy would sometimes so you had those 4 sitting there, and then everybody else would kind of sit around. And I remember the first time, they would talk cases, and they'd laugh, and they'd argue and solve the world's
Or
problems.
Judge Amy Chling.
That's right, justice of the peace. Yeah, she's a good person. And you'd sit there and you listen, and once in a while you'd go over and ask them a question or whatever and go back to your own table. But I remember the first time.
Free legal advice.
Right. You know, you could ask them for help. But the first time Bill said to me, "Hey, why don't you join us? Sit down and talk to us." And I was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." It was like the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I'm 55 years old, and I still remember that one moment when Bill and Tom said, "Sit down, join us at the table." And it became a table of 5. And so, you know, it was amazing. They said, Charlie Waterman's gone, George Foley's gone. These guys told the greatest. I mean, George Foley was the district attorney in Clark County in 1958.
Yeah.
You know the stories that guy could tell? and then sometimes he would just crack you up. He'd come back and he'd be so pissed off coming to the doctor. I said, "What's the matter, George?" He said, "The doctor said I got cataracts." I was like, "What's wrong with that?" He goes, "He promised me I'd never get cataracts." So I yelled at him. I said, "Doc, you told me I'd never get cataracts." And the guy says, "George, I didn't think you'd live this long."
Oh! So one of the questions, and running for Nevada Supreme Court, and it's actually one of the things that actually bugs me a little bit, because we do have 3 co-equal branches of government. And I know like everything is politics now. But one of the things that I would like you to, if you would kind of chime in on, is how political we have made the executive branch, especially when it comes to Supreme Courts, whether it's the U.S. Supreme Court or whether it's the Nevada Supreme Court. Because the number one question, I'm sure you've been asked this several times, is, would you legislate from the bench and you're too liberal for me? Like, where does it, like, can you elaborate on that a little bit? How you answer that question?
Yeah. So, you know, the way the feds do it, you know, appointing judges, is it is political in the federal realm, because you get the president of the United States who's going to appoint a Supreme Court justice. And so that is a political position. But it goes through a Senate hearing process so that the senators can debate and make a
Senate
vote.
hearing committee.
Right. And so they make a vote, and then if they pass that, they get appointed to the bench. So it's a process that goes through both sides. Both sides get to argue, right, or put an input on that. In Nevada, except the executive branch doesn't appoint judges here. We elect. And so there's an argument that goes back and forth. That, you know, one of the things, my pet peeves for judges, is I don't like judges who've never done a jury trial. I mean, I just want to judge, you know, personally. Right. If you're running for a criminal court, that you should have done some criminal trials. If you're running for a family court seat, you should have done some family trials. And if you're a civil judge, you want to have that experience behind you. And I also believe, you know, possibly we should test them. You know?
With the family court, do you think that a family court judge should be a parent or a spouse to have that personal feeling of family court?
You know, that is a good question. I'd say not necessarily. I was thinking
because they use a lot of discretion, so you would think
absolutely. You know, they're applying the law, but you don't want the personal feelings to get in. And then, you know, I was raised Catholic, and I remember my dad and I had this conversation too. You know, my parents went to a thing called marriage encounter, and Italian priest would teach them. And my dad came back. He's born in Italy, and he'd say, you know, it's odd to me that a priest who's never been married, maybe never even dated anybody, is giving marital advice to someone who, you know, it's hard to do that, but, you know, they come in from an outside view, right, looking at it from a different perspective. And I think judges need to do the same thing. But I would like to see, you know, a family court judge have some family law experience, you know, have done that. And that's why I think I'm more qualified than my opponent for this seat, is because I've done family, I've done civil, I've done criminal. And out here, it is an election game, you know, it is a thing. And I think, though, when you look at it, it shouldn't be a political thing. Right. You know, judge is a nonpartisan race. And when you're running for judge, and all you want, I don't care if you're black, white, Asian, you know, Hispanic, Republican, Democrat, nonpartisan, independent, we all want the same thing. You know, we all want to be treated fair when we go in front of that judge. You want to know that you got a fair shot. You don't want to know that this person has, if it's a family court judge, sides on the side of women all the time, or men. You know, you don't want to. You want to have someone that, look, I got a fair shot. That when I give you the facts and you hear this trial or you read this case, you're going to apply the law to the facts and give me a fair shot. That's all I ask. Yeah. And that's what I do. I've never been accused, you know, anything unethical in my career. I've never been brought to the bar like that. I've never had. I think I have a reputation in the community of being fair and just. My campaign motto is equal justice under the law. And that's what I want. There's people that need to be punished, punish the deserving, right? The Air Force has a thing, you punish the deserving. You do. There are people that deserve to be in custody, but there's people that deserve a second chance. We don't do some of that. So I'd like to see some changes that way. But when you want to judge, when you're looking at a judge, you want to look at the history of the person, right? And so as a defense attorney, you hire me as a hired gun. I am there to protect your constitutional rights, and I will do everything I can within the bounds of the law to protect your constitutional rights. As a legislator, I am there for my constituents. And the person that I was talking about, I
So
could.
the Constitution is actually your constituent.
That's it.
When you're a judge.
When you're a judge, that's it. I'm there to apply the law to the
So
Constitution.
how do you feel about the Constitution?
I think what do you mean? I love it. It's a living, breathing document that changes over the times, right? When the Constitution was first drafted, black people weren't even considered having the right to vote, not even a person, right? It wasn't even until the 1800s they were given 3/5.
You are going to get some pushback on that one. I mean, I agree what you're saying to a point that we need to evolve over time. But when you start calling the document a living, breathing document, there's also people that'll say the Constitution is a legal document. It says what it says, and it doesn't say what it doesn't say. So interpreting those words can lead you astray to not necessarily uphold the original intent of the Constitution.
When I'm talking about a living, breathing document that needs changes, look across the table from you, right? Black man sitting here. In
28%.
Well, when he was when the Constitution
What about me?
when the Constitution was drafted, he wasn't even considered a person.
Right.
You do consider him a person now.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
you would agree with me that this man sitting here who fought for our country has the right to vote.
Absolutely, or I
And so-
wouldn't go in business.
And now women, right? Back then, women didn't have the right to vote. Susan B. Anthony got in what we call good trouble, giving speeches and voted in an election, got herself arrested to prove a point that women deserve the right to vote. And so when I talk about a living, breathing document, I mean things like that. There's fundamental things that we as a nation, when the founding fathers drafted that document, slavery was okay.
Right.
It's not. We can all agree that that's not okay.
True.
And so the document needed to be amended, and that's why we have the amendments to it,
Right.
to change that. And so it does need to change over time. There's certain things that over time, we as a society will change. Thank God that women now are the majority in the Nevada State Legislature, majority in the judges on the Supreme Court, a majority in Justice Court. You're talking about Amy Cellini. There's women. But if you applied the Constitution strictly and said we're not going to change anything like that, we wouldn't be sitting here with this gentleman today. We wouldn't have women.
Yeah. No, I agree as far as like amendments are
Yes.
concerned.
So it's just things need to change.
Right.
Everyone, and so I one of the things I do is teach at the law school. Right, I'm also an adjunct
Oh, you
professor.
do that?
Yeah, I teach at Boyd. I've been doing that for several years. I teach trial advocacy. I teach opening statements and closing arguments, and I teach pretrial litigation.
Nice.
And I'm the only adjunct professor that I know of that teaches more than one subject. They hire him for certain things, but I got these other. I'm looking forward to continuing to do that. And I tell my students, when you talk about the Constitution or you talk about the way things are in trial advocacy and the way we do things,
Right.
the law is very slow moving. It's been, we go back to England for most of our law with the barristers and the white wigs, and they developed their law from Rome, right? And Romans developed their law from Greece.
Yeah.
And in 2,000 years, you can't expect a lot to change so fast. We are a slow-moving conservative profession. But things do eventually evolve and need to change. So, I would apply the law to the facts as strictly as I could, but I'm not out there to legislate from the bench, and I don't think anybody else does that gets up there. I just want a fair shake for Nevadans. I want to make Nevada a place that everybody is proud to. Make it this great state that it's always been, and I think we can continue to make it what it is. Better. But you have to sometimes amend things like that because it's time for change on certain things. So, but it is that's what I tell my students. You can't expect things to change overnight. 2,000 years it took for some things to change.
Right.
200 years in the case of, say, women getting married. It is a tough thing. It's been suffered. That's why they call it suffrages. Suffrage. You have to suffer to get through it. right? But they do, and it is time for certain things to change. And as we grow as a nation, as we grow as a state, certain things will change. And so anybody that says, no, I would never change anything, I'm a strict constructionist, then I say, you're talking about people still being changed.
Right.
You can't do that.
Yeah. Well, extremes on any side, I think is silly. And I am not an attorney, but I do
Play on TV?
I do find, I did sleep at a Holiday Inn Express last night. But one of the things I did think was pretty interesting is when the Affordable Care Act went to the Supreme Court, and a lot of my conservative friends are like, oh no, it's unconstitutional, it'll be struck down, the government can't force you to do. I was like, wait a minute. The way they drafted that legislation is pretty slick because it's a tax. So since it's a tax, they're not penalizing you technically for not purchasing it. They're taxing you for not, and the government can weigh and levy taxes any way it sees fit. Congress can, according to the 16th Amendment. And so a lot of people didn't like Judge Roberts for that ruling, but I said, technically, if you're that strong of a conservative, he actually did follow the Constitution.
So sometimes you follow the Constitution or you follow the law and you don't get the outcome you like when you apply the facts to the law. Yeah,
the law is the law.
Right. It's I tell people, I may think the speed limit should be 75 miles an hour instead of 65 or 55 on the freeway. But if I'm a Supreme Court justice and I have to apply the law says that they sped and they were doing it, I may not agree with what it, but when you apply the law to the facts, you can only come to one conclusion. Yeah. And so that's what it's about. It's about fairness.
How do you feel about the rule of evidence?
I love the rule of evidence. What are you talking about?
Do you feel that judges should follow the rule of evidence?
Absolutely.
Before making a decision?
Right. The rules are there for a reason, right? We as a legislature enact these evidentiary rules, and like I said, go back to beginning of the founding of this country, go back to England, go back to Rome, go back to Greece. These foundational doctrines have been there for that long, and they're there for a reason, because they work. And what it is, the reason we have the evidence code is when you're at trial, it's to get to the truth, right? And they say the greatest avenue of getting to the truth is usually cross-examination, and you have to follow the evidence rules and trial procedures to get that. But it's there for a reason, because it's worked.
Yeah. So, the Supreme Court justice, they overturn judges' decision if it's appealed to them. How do you feel about judges not following state laws or following their own canons or not following the Constitution, not giving litigants the right to be heard, especially in family court?
Yeah. Not
giving litigants the right to present evidence, talking down to litigants that are improper. How do you feel about what those judges are doing?
Personally, the way you're phrasing the question, it's unfortunate that happens, because
it happens a lot at family court.
A judge is supposed to be impartial, right? And so you would think that's the job. Lady Justice is blind for a reason, right? And whether you're represented by counsel or pro per, you got to follow the rules of evidence. And sometimes judges need to advise, say, a pro per litigant, unless you're outside the bounds of the rules. And I understand it gets frustrating, but you have to treat everybody with dignity and respect. And again, that's what you want when you go in front of a judge. You just want what's fair. You want to be treated with dignity and respect, because whether the judge is going to rule for you or against you, you want to have your day in court. And you can appeal it to the higher court. You can go forward if you need to go forward and appeal those decisions. But the person who's handing down that rule should be impartial, should be fair, and treat everybody the same. And so it's unfortunate to hear things like that go on there. You asked me what I feel about judges that don't follow the law. My opponent came out and said that Ozzy's never argued in front of the Supreme Court. I've never had an oral argument. I've argued in front of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is higher. But I have drafted motions to the Supreme Court. And like I said, they can either grant it, they can deny it, or grant you the oral argument. And I've had motions granted, I've had motions denied. I had a client who was in custody and was a judge who's now retired. I won't name him to embarrass him, but there was a judge on the bench who was retired. And I know. And I appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, this judge applied the rule incorrectly, and she needs a new sentencing, and we're going to order this judge to let her out. And so I went into the court the next day, and I said, hey, I got this order from the Supreme Court. You got to let her out. And the judge said, I don't care what the Supreme Court says. I ain't letting her out.
Isn't that a violation?
That's what I'm saying. I've had that happen to me. I've experienced it firsthand. And so I had to go back to the Supreme Court and get them to release her over this judge's basically saying, yeah. And so it happens routinely, you know?
Okay. Assemblyman Fimo. You know, the Supreme Court, you remember they were trying to unseat Catherine Ramsey in North Las Vegas.
I do. Years ago, yeah, we were bringing names up from the past.
Supreme Court came down with a ruling and says that you can't recall a judge.
Because you can't overturn an election, right?
You can't recall a judge. But you can recall any other seat, but not a judge. Although a judge is elected, you think that you'd be able to recall.
And the way I don't have the ruling in front of the order in front of me, but I think it was what they're saying is, you know, you can't change the thing of election. You can, but a judicial ethics can make it so a judge can't run again,
Right.
and they can remove it.
Right. So the Supreme Court says, you know, the reason why you can't recall a judge is because we have the Judicial Disciplinary Commission in place. But a lot of people don't have faith in the Judicial Disciplinary Commission. How do you feel about the Judicial Disciplinary Commission? Do you think it should be revamped? Do you think that they should start looking at more cases that involve judges that are violating the laws on the bench to protect the general public? Or do you think that the Judicial Disciplinary Commission should protect judges from each other, like in the case of Potter and Bell?
What the Judicial Disciplinary Commission is come down and hand out rulings, and then the Supreme Court will look at it from there. But
Right, if they appeal it to the Supreme.
we have a fundamental problem with what's called, you know, judicial immunity, qualified immunity. District attorneys have immunity. And I'll tell you a story about my opponent. When he was a young attorney, came out and he was arrested for a crime of moral turpitude in Texas, theft. Got it dismissed.
Okay.
Rightfully so. You know, went through the program, but he comes out, finds himself as a district attorney 5 years later, and he's trying a murder case. And he had proof that the man who was charged with this crime, named Fred Steese, actually was in another state. Mr. Steese had collected a Western Union telegram, and you can only collect, not a telegram, a moneygram, money, and you can only do that when you're there signing the document.
You gotta be in person.
And he signed that document in person on the day of the murder. And the state knew it.
How many miles away?
600,
600
800 miles,
miles.
right. And they knew it. And my opponent in this race hid that evidence from the defense, didn't bring it up.
How could one sleep at night?
How can you, right, exactly. How do you sleep at night when you do something like that?
Because we know what happens in prison.
Right. And you know what happened to this guy, but so Fred spent 21 years, almost 22 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit.
Yeah.
Nevada taxpayers paid $1.5 million to warehouse this guy. Governor Sandoval signed an order pardoning him and an order saying we're going to pay him $2.2 million for wrongfully warehousing. That was Sisolak now that did
Didn't
that.
your opponent's daughter have a hand in that?
In the law for DeMar LaBerry, another defendant. We paid $2.2 million to compensate him, so $3.7 million. I just spent 2 special sessions at the legislature making tough decisions, cutting 14% across the board. Yeah. And educators are suffering. Children aren't going to school. They can't afford iPads and what is it called? Chromebooks.
Chromebooks.
How many Chromebooks could we have bought for the students with, $3.7 million? And worst of all, the real killer's been on the street for 25 years. Doug Hernan's never apologized for what he did. He's never said, I have a bad night's sleep about this. He testified against Fred. Knowing what he did, he testified against Fred in 1998 when he first appealed. And he testified against him in 2013.
He didn't want to lose face.
Right. How dare you, right? And Thomas Jefferson has a great quote. Indeed, I tremble when I reflect that God is just. Because one day you're going to have to meet somebody and answer to what you did. Yep. And so going back to your question, we have to do away with things like qualified immunity because he was taken to the bar. But because prosecutors have qualified immunity, he was never disbarred, he was never disciplined, he was never punished for what he did. He owes
Did they throw the statute of limitations in there too?
Statute of limitations, yeah, past due. So he owes the Nevada taxpayers an apology. He owes Fred Steese an apology. And in my opinion, he's wholly unqualified to run for the Nevada State Supreme Court. You want somebody who's going to be fair. You just want a fair shot.
Right.
And you know with his history, Doug Herndon cannot be fair. You know what he's going to do. Tiger doesn't change his spots, right? Mm-hmm. He's been that way his whole life. He's been that way on the bench. He's been overturned in the last 10 months twice on criminal cases for not giving a defendant their constitutional right to a jury instruction. where the Nevada State Supreme Court has said Doug Herndon manifestly abused his discretion. In another case, Gathray, within the last year, attorney got evidence suppressed in Justice Court. State took it around to grand jury to bring it up to there. He allowed that evidence over the defense attorney's objection, went up to the Supreme Court. Again, Doug, you manifestly abused your discretion. How can a judge like that think he's qualified to sit on the Supreme Court in judgment of other judges, right? And it's because of things like that, because of qualified immunity and stuff like that, that you walk around almost arrogant about it. We have to stop things like that. And so whether if it's in the family court or in the district court or the district attorney's office, you know, if you've done something wrong, you have to be held accountable. In the military, you're held accountable, right?
Uniform Code of Military Justice.
You don't get away with things like that. You don't get away.
In fact, they do double jeopardy in the military. If you were to commit a crime in the civilian sector and you charge in court for that, then the military will charge you for the same crime again and give you another punishment. A lot of people would say, and for full disclosure, Assemblyman Fumo, I've received several messages, texts, phone calls from affiliates, members of the public, and they wanted veterans in politics to pay more attention to you in a positive light, because they're saying that you need to be on the Supreme Court justice. So I'm going to ask you this question. People are going to say, well, Assemblyman Fumo has never been a judge.
They'd be wrong.
Right? How is he going to be at a Supreme Court justice? You explain.
Okay.
And before you explain, let me add, Chris Pickering, Justice Pickering, has never been a judge before she was at the Supreme Court. And she's a fabulous justice.
Right.
So, go.
So I actually have served in the judicial capacity before. So in 2013, I was appointed by the Clark County Commission to be a hearing master judge for the Police Fatality Fact-Finding Review Board. I sat on the case that handled the CC's Pizza shooting, where two of Metro's finest were shot. Okay, I sat on multiple hearings for that. In 2015, I was appointed by Justice Court. You know, they have their judge pro tems, and they also have hearing referees to hear lower level offenses in the Justice Court. So I have worn the robe. I have been a judge. I left the judicial referee position in 2016 when I ran for the Nevada State Legislature, because we have three branches of government, and you can't serve in two branches at the same time. And so
Can't serve two masters.
Exactly right. And so I had to leave the judicial branch, being the judicial referee, in order to run for the for the legislature and be an assemblyman. And so you give up that one job to do the other one.
Right.
And so I've represented hardworking Nevadans my entire career. I fought for the Nevada State Constitution, the United States Constitution. My opponent has never done that. He's worked for the government, right? He's never signed the front of the check. He's always been taking it. He's never paid payroll taxes. He's never paid in employees' health benefits. He's never had to worry about that because he's always been sucking off the government teeth, right?
Right.
And now he thinks he can go from his appointment there in the district court bench to a Supreme Court justice, never having served the people. And so, although you point out Justice Pickering was never a judge before, and there's other Nevada Supreme Court justices who have done that as well. Justice Stephan, prior to probably becoming, he had never served as a judge before going to the Nevada State Supreme Court. I have. I've served in the judiciary, I've served at the legislature, and I intend to go back to the judiciary and serve as a Nevada State Supreme Court justice. So when people say that, they just need to be educated. And if you Google my name and you look at the things I've done, and you Google my opponent's name and you see the things that he's done, you can see who's qualified. And like I said, I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, nonpartisan, independent, you just want someone who's going to be fair. And when you look at my qualifications and you look at my opponent's qualifications and you see what he's done in his past and you see what I've done and what I continue to do in my present jobs, there's only one choice for the Nevada State Supreme Court seat D, and that's Ozzie Fumo. I appreciate you asking me that question.
Assemblyman Fumo, how do you feel about the anti-SLAPP law?
How do I feel about it?
Yeah.
Now, I as a Supreme Court justice, the canons of ethics don't allow me to argue or articulate how I feel about a certain law or how I would argue it or how I would decide a certain case if it came in front of me.
Right.
So I can't answer it, but
So you can't answer. That's a good answer, by the way.
Yeah.
Jim, you have anything else?
No, this isn't actually a question. One of the things wanted to say is, well, first off, thank you for coming on the show.
Hour gone by already?
And yeah, and here's the thing. I really like what you said about people just need to educate themselves, because I've been we had a guest on, Lisa Guzman,
The trustee for A.
yeah, trustee for A. And it was interesting because we disagreed on some things, right? Well, which is perfectly fine. But she explained how the money moves and stuff. And so one of the things I said is people just need to educate themselves. And I like that you brought that up. So running for judge is a nonpartisan position. And it's also one of those things that, and you also brought up, he brought up all my talking points, that a judge will impact your life immediately. So you need to pay attention to judges, but most importantly, you really do need to educate yourself. So one of the things that, while I appreciate the fact that people are starting to pay more attention to judges, judicial races, one of the things that's getting frustrating is now they have started to over-politicize it. So each party now, whether it's Republican, Democrat, and the other 40 that are out there, now they send out these mailers, and they tell you what judges you should vote for just because they think they're Republican or they think they're Democrat. I think the viewers and listeners should rethink that. Whether you think that the Assemblyman is maybe too liberal or maybe too conservative for your take, educate yourself, look him up, do the research. At the end of the day, if somebody is qualified and will apply the law fairly, then that is somebody that, in my opinion, you should look at and you should consider giving your vote to.
Simon, do you have anything else to say?
No, I think when the bottom line is, like I said, you just want somebody who's going to be fair. You want somebody who is going to apply the law to the facts. And no matter what party you are, when you're at the Supreme Court, that doesn't matter anymore. Justice is blind. I'm just there to serve the community as best I can, like I've done for my entire career. When you're at the Supreme Court, you're not a hired gun working for one side or another. You're not an assemblyman working for a constituency. You're not a member of a party. You are a nonpartisan personnel fairly applying the law to the facts, and that's what it's all about. And I've done that, and I can do that. I've done that in my teaching. I teach at the law school, been fairly. If you look at my history, I've never been accused of any ethical violation, because I've done that my entire career.
Well, when you're a senator, so what different committees do you sit on?
Okay, so when I first went there in 2017, I was on judiciary,
Okay.
obviously, and I was on transportation, and I was on education.
Okay.
And education was 3-day a week or 2-day a week committee. Probably should be 7 days a week. It is the busiest committee I was on. And a lot of, talk about family, a lot of heartbreaking decisions had to be made there as well. And teachers, they are just as educated as attorneys and doctors, but they don't get half or a quarter or 10% of the pay. They deserve a lot more than what we give them. My daughter told me when she started having to homeschool her kids, and do the Zoom meetings and stuff, she goes, my kids' teachers lied to me last session. I said, what are you talking about? She said, they told me my kids were a joy to have in class. They're not a joy to have in class, It's tough what they do. In my second session when I'm back, I was still on judiciary. I was on natural resources and mining, and I was the vice chair of legislative operations.
Okay. And during the 2 terms you sat as an assemblyman, what bills did you sponsor?
I sponsored, I couldn't even tell. There's probably hundreds that you sign your name to if you think it's a good bill. I talked about Harvey's Law. Right. One of the other bills that I'm most proud of too happened in the 2017 legislative session was Assembly Bill 207, and it was when we expanded the jury pool. In Nevada, I do capital murder cases. I do every kind of case. But I was in 2015-16, I was doing a murder case, and we had a black defendant. And we brought in, because it was a capital murder case, it was a jury questionnaire. And out of 300 questionnaires, only about 8 black people responded. We have 26% black population in Clark County. And so we called in the jury commissioner, we talked about it, argued about it, and basically the judge said, well, counselor, when you get up to the legislature, if you win your election, go in there and make it better. So we were picking juries based on driving records and NV Energy records, power bills. And so after '08, when the economy crashed, so if you moved in with your parents and your dad had the power bill in his name, he would get called to jury duty over and over. You might get called once in a while because you had a driver's license. We expanded it into voter registration records and unemployment records. And so we had a bigger pool to choose from. And so when I came back in 2018 and I started doing trials again, I saw the difference myself. That we had a fair representation of the population. We had 30% black population in the jury pool. The Asian population is growing in this state, and you wouldn't see that because a lot of the Asians, they live together, right? And the economy is crashing again. We're going to see that over and over where people start to live with each other, but we're going to have a fair representation. And so clients now get a jury of their peers. Right. And that was one of the most important bills, that I really pushed for and like to see it. It was a nonpartisan effort. You'd be surprised, people talk about. Oh, yeah. And in Clark County, we do the most charter trials. We're the biggest county. Washoe County, obviously, second. A huge drop off when you get to Nye County. I think in 2015 they had only done 2, where we had done a few hundred. And cases go through the system, they get filtered out, they're negotiated and resolved. So it wasn't a huge issue for, say, the other counties, but you still, no matter where you live, you still want a fair representation of the community to judge you. You want that jury of your peers.
If you had the power to amend the Constitution, what would you do?
Say again, because of the canons, I can't really comment on what if I was running for the assembly, I'd have an answer for you.
Assemblyman Fimo, it was a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate
it. It's a pleasure having you on the show.
I appreciate it.
Could you look into the cameras and tell folks why they should go? And I think we're doing some of it in person.
Well,
vote.
You can. So you can go. You can vote in person on the final day of early voting, which I believe is October 17th, and then you can also go on election day on November 3rd. And you'll be getting a letter in the mail that'll tell you where your polling place is. And then also you can vote by mail.
So the majority of folks that's probably going to be voting by mail and circle the little bubble right next to your name and
make sure you sign your ballot.
And put it in the secure sleeve envelope. Right. And put it in the envelope that says free postage. And sign the back and print their name and stick it in the mail before 7 p.m. November 3rd. Could you look in the camera and tell folks why they need to do that for you? Put your name in there and your point of contact.
I'll tell you, this is the most important election in the state, right? It is the only statewide race you have. My name is Ozzie Fumo. I'm running for Nevada State Supreme Court seat D. I've lived here since 1975. I've been teaching at the law school for the last several years. I've been a Nevada State legislator, and I've defended hardworking Nevadans of all colors, shapes, sizes, and economic statuses for my entire career. And that's what I do. I defend the Constitution. And when I get to the Supreme Court, I will be the most fair and equitable judge you will see. If you look at my endorsements, I have won every single endorsement over my opponent. And 2, I want to point out to you, the people that know me and they know my opponent the best are the court marshals. They're in the court with him. They're in the court with me every day. They're the ones that protect the public. They're the ones that work for the judges. And when they evaluated both of us and they looked at our history and how we treat people and how we effectively argue in court and what we do in court and our history, they picked me over a sitting judge. That speaks volumes. Another endorsement I received is SEIU, Local 1107. They are the court staff personnel. They are the district attorney court staff personnel. They're the public defender court staff personnel. So they're the judge's secretary, the JEA. They sit next to the judge on the bench. The clerk, the backup clerk, the ones who sit next to the district attorney, the ones who sit next to the public defenders, who do all that work there. They evaluated both me and my opponent. And after working with me for 24 years and working with him, they overwhelmingly chose me. It wasn't a dual endorsement, they picked me. So the ones who work in the courthouse, who know both of us, chose me. I've gotten culinary, I've gotten bartenders, I've gotten labor, I've gotten firefighters, I've received the teachers' endorsements. And those that serve this community overwhelmingly picked me over my opponent. North and South, AFL-CIO, North and South, firefighters, North and South, teachers, North and South. So do your due diligence, look into it, and if you want someone who can be fair, and you want someone who has your back, and you want someone who's going to work, there's only one choice for this seat. That's Ozzie Fumo for Nevada State Supreme Court, seat D. You can look me up on my website, www.ozziefumo.com. Appreciate it.
Folks, that's Ozzie Fumo. He's the current Nevada State Assemblyman. And with his opponent, he's the only one in a statewide race for Nevada State Supreme Court. Folks, this is an important race. You know, like the presidential race, they say that's an important race, but in our state, Nevada State Supreme Court is an extremely important race. And through me doing veterans in politics for the past 15 years, I have never had so many phone calls and text messages requesting that veterans in politics bring Ozzie Fumo on the show. And that speaks volume. Apparently, a lot of people are viewing this race as an extremely important race because Supreme Court justices overturn judges' decisions. They're the ones that make the foundation for the rest of the courts in the states to follow. It's the top court in the land. We really need to pay attention to this race. I would hope that people go and do their due diligence. Look at the two people that are running for Supreme Court races. And women, there is no women in this race, okay? There's no minorities in this race, okay? It's two white Caucasian men that's running for Nevada Supreme Court. We need to pick the right one of the two. And I encourage everybody, look at both of these gentlemen's education, look at their background, look at their ethics, look at what they do, look at their disciplinary records. There's only one of them that have skeletons in his closet, and it's not Ozzie Fumo. So I encourage everybody, this is not a Republican or a Democrat or independent American or libertarian or just a regular Joe candidate running. This is a nonpartisan race, and I don't want people to get caught up in the political spectrum of things. I want people to go and vote for a person that's fair, that's just, that's the common man. That's who we should put in the Supreme Court. Somebody that's walked our lives. And Ozzie Fumo, as far as what I've read about him, as far as what I've known about him, I believe that he's the person for the Supreme Court justice. And I truly believe that out of the two men that's running. And that's my personal opinion. Out of the two men that's running, I will vote for Ozzie Fumo. I don't know how Jim is going to vote, but I will vote for Ozzie Fumo.
Oh, trust me, he's got my vote.
No pressure.
No,
So
he got my vote,
I
trust me.
encourage everybody to really pay attention to the Nevada State Supreme Court race, which is the only statewide race that we have in this coming election. And just vote your conscience. Vote for somebody that's fair and just. Just vote for Ozzie Fumo. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas with Veterans in Politics. Until next time.